Hello, BookTube. I'm Jonathan, and today we are joined by Bart from Bart's Bookspace and Robin from Bookspin in order to talk about Klara and the Sun, both the book and the upcoming film, which is coming out later in 2024. So, just quickly, for those of you that might not have read it, here's the quick premise. In a somewhat undetermined future, artificial friends exist, and we follow an artificial friend known as Klara and her journey to find a partner, be of service to a young person that might need an artificial friend. And along the way, we learn about these characters, the technology, the world, and it's perhaps quite a touching little story because that's what we're going to get into today. Bart and Robin and I formed a little trio, a little book read along. That's what you do in book read alongs, you read books. And what we are going to talk about are four things: what we liked about Klara and the Sun, what we didn't like about Klara and the Sun, what we expect might work in the film, and what we think might be hard to translate to a film adaptation. So, Bart, why don't you kick us off? What is something that you liked about Klara and the Sun, the book?
Well, first of all, hello everyone out there watching in the virtual reality. So happy. Thank you for doing this, putting this together, Jonathan, on your channel. This is really awesome and fabulous intro, may I say. So we briefly behind the scenes talked about it. Who's going to do the intro? And we're like, no, no, no. Jonathan stepped up
I
and
appreciate it.
one time out of the park. So fabulous intro. It's not easy. So yeah, thank you for getting this going. And what did I like about Clara and the Sun? There's a lot. There's a lot to like, in my opinion. Overall, I'll say it was a good reading experience for me. But truly, it starts and ends with the main character, Clara. I really connected with Clara. We are seeing the world through Clara's eyes. It's a first person narrative, and Clara takes us along for this ride from the very beginning when she's in a store for sale in the window, trying to figure out the world, looking out into the sun, and then more of a pastoral fields where she ends up living. Beautiful story in the way it presents kind of this fairy tale like quality to it, very easily written. So it's very approachable. I think this book is easy to read. I'm going to offer it to my kids to read. I mean, they read,
Nice.
all kinds of books, but I think it's a book that can appeal to most people. Clara has this innocence, this purity to it that I connected right away with. She quickly became one of my favorite non-human characters in SF. Her and Rocky from Project Hail Mary, and I could name a few others. But yeah,
Nice.
so and through her eyes, we get to examine the world, and the world is really intriguing here. The world is really interesting, so we get to explore consciousness, both human, what makes us human, as Clara's learning, figuring out humans. For example, like what is the difference between crying and tears of joy to artificial intelligence, to an
Mm.
artificial friend like Clara? That might be a little bit tricky. So there were things also. There were moments when I was trying to figure out Clara's emotional life, her emotional intelligence. Is she feeling things? And that was fascinating. There's one part in the book where Clara is getting bullied by some kids, some teens. And I was thinking, as she's standing there, kind of frozen, what is she feeling? And I thought this was super interesting. So everything revolving around Clara's perceptions to me were really interesting. But also, I think at heart, this book is about love, different kinds of love, and this was super interesting seeing that through her eyes. Chrissy's and Josie's love, mother and daughter, very kind of troubled love in a sense, with some difficult moments, some creepy moments almost there. Rick and Josie, kind of boyfriend girlfriend relationship, and also Clara and the Sun. Clara and the Sun. There's kind of love there as well. Yeah, it's kind of a god. Sun's like a godlike figure for Clara, and that was super interesting. So I think these were the reasons why I connected to the book. It was because of Clara.
Very nice.
Yeah.
Robin, what are some things you enjoyed about the book?
Well, I agree with Bart that Clara is a really fascinating character. I think she is the star of this novel. I think this novel works really well as a compelling AI character study. So we've got this sentient android character who's, as Bart said, she's an AF, an artificial friend, and I found the opening section of the book really compelling. It's when she's up for sale in this department store. We see the world through her eyes, and she's got remarkable observational qualities and a very high emotional intelligence, which makes her, I think, a deeply sympathetic character, far more so than the human characters, in my opinion. She's very kind and compassionate and polite, uh, unfailingly polite, and she's also a symbol of hope, because this book is set in quite a dark and dystopian world that which is often alluded to. There's quite a sort of bleak sort of piece of world building going along. We've got things like genetic engineering of children, and to make them to uplift their intelligence, and we've got quite a mysterious and bleak world outside, but we've got Klara at the center of all of this, and she's such a lovely, wonderful character, full of hope, and she displays what I think would be the best qualities in anyone. Really, she's what we should all aspire to be: kind and compassionate, and loving and caring towards others. So, a very sympathetic character, and but also she's not a human character. So
Yes.
she never judges people, she simply observes them. She's Her way of perceiving the world is different to ours. So she's quite idiosyncratic. She's quite mysterious in some ways. So it can be quite confusing to read sometimes, but the way she interprets the things around her. So I think this book, in me, it evokes quite a lot of emotions and qualities when reading, and it's a very heartfelt and tender story, and a very interesting AI protagonist.
For sure. I think it's interesting how we've all kind of connected and kind of had it developed a somewhat complex relationship with Klara. You mentioned it was emotional. We talked a little bit as we were reading it. And I'm pretty sure for every part, I was like, this part made me want to cry. This part made me feel like crying. So obviously, I was connecting in an emotional way to the book. And it's interesting because in real life, I kind of hate AI. Like everything I see, the AI, I'm like, no, this is going to be terrible for humanity. Haven't you ever read a sci-fi book? This all inevitably goes horribly wrong. But then when you put AI into an android type character, a cyborg type character, in fiction, I often end up connecting with them. I often really end up enjoying AI characters. And so it's an interesting question. Is that because of the way the author has written them? Are they trying to say something about AI, or are they trying to say something about humans, the way they portrayed the character? Or is it really just an empty vessel? It's just a machine. And me as a human, I'm projecting my own human thoughts and emotions onto a character like Klara. Maybe Klara is just an empty vessel, but Ishiguro has provided the opportunity for us to see the things that you were talking about, Robin, that hope, that lack of judgment, different displays of love, like, observing without negativity. It's an opportunity to find the best in humans, regardless of whether or not that AI or not is really conscious. So it's definitely the characters and relationships that I enjoyed the most in this story. Let's talk about some things that maybe didn't work for us. Robin, is there anything? Did you have any notes on the book?
Uh, yeah. So I think on the whole, yeah, I did enjoy it on the whole. Um, I think if if anything, I would have liked if some of the sci-fi concepts that form the backdrop of the story, I would have liked them to be explored a bit more in a bit more depth. Um, that the whole sci-fi concepts are kind of quite vague. They're kind of in the background. So
Mm-hmm.
I've alluded to the genetic engineering, for example. That is never really sort of explained. It's kind of a bit of dystopian sort of world building, if you like, and it is actually quite central to the whole premise of the narrative and the main characters and Josie's character. But it's never explained. It's just alluded to.
Yeah.
And there are a few little things like that, which, because we're all sci-fi readers, these are the kind of things that we really enjoy.
Yes.
And it's a bit more, it's very soft science fiction. It's more emphasis on the literary side than the SF side. I would have liked a bit more um, science fiction, but apart from that, I was pretty happy with it.
That's fair. But did
Yeah,
you have any criticisms of Clara and the Sun?
I did. Oh, yes, yes. Well, first of all, I totally agree with Robin, especially since it seems like it's science fiction heavy because we're talking about our main character
Yes.
being an android, and
Yes.
then the big bulk of the book is really, or the what's happening to Josie is happening because of the fact that she was lifted, genetically engineered in a sense. But then again, it doesn't read like a science fiction book at all. And I was waiting for things to kind of come together, get explained a little bit. There's vagueness to this book that almost feels like was written by someone who is using science fiction elements, but isn't really a science fiction author, which is fair. And I still love the book for what it was. Um, what Another thing that didn't work for me well was, and we talked on Discord about this. I mentioned this. Um, you guys defended Ishiguro a little bit, I think, but I didn't love the language that was used. It was seemed a little bit weird. So two things. One is the language that was used seemed a little bit strange to me, a little bit dated almost. And of course, in this story, we don't really know if it's taking place in the future or is this kind of an alternate reality to our present. And I watched a video with Ishiguro talking about it, and he said it doesn't matter. Somebody asked him, "Don't worry about it. It doesn't matter," which makes sense. I guess it doesn't matter to the story, but yet the language created a situation where I loved Klara. She seemed to have a voice, a personality almost, and all the humans were kind of the same, as far as they lacked that voice. So I didn't care about them. I
Interesting.
didn't care what happens to Rick. Is he gonna get into college? I don't care. Josie, I didn't really care if she gets well or not. I was connected to Klara. As long as she was good and happy, I was happy. So the humans were, and I think Robin, you mentioned this previously, that the humans were, you weren't connecting with them as much, and that was a lost opportunity because there's a lot of emotional depth between the mom and Josie, for example. But I really didn't care about them so much. And I know, Jonathan, you're reading Dark Tower. I'm reading Dark Tower now. Stephen King can, on 2 pages, a character that has a tiny appearance can feel real. And just come off the page as a unique voice. And here they all kind of sounded, the same. For example, there's Rick, a boy who has not gone through that gene editing, and then there are other kids who have been lifted and they can go to colleges and they're supposedly much smarter, but they all sound the same. So I think there's some missed opportunities there. And I thought this was going to be explained maybe later in the book. It really wasn't. Some plot conveniences, also some kind of weird stuff happens in the book. I won't go into any spoilers, obviously, that I didn't love. Overall, it was good, but there's some things that could have been, in my opinion, a little bit better. And they would then pack a little bit more of an emotional punch for me on the human side.
Interesting. So I'll say there's
Yeah,
two things there I agreed with and one that I disagreed with. So I
go for it.
agree
That's
that this
fun.
works better as a literary. Yeah, there we go. I need an AF to defend me. I'm gonna build a robot and make it go fight Bart on my behalf.
Yeah,
I agree this works better as a literary novel than a sci-fi novel. As a sci-fi reader, I did want more of the technology to be explained, more of the dystopian world building to be explained, and it did create a little bit of a mystery there that I thought was going to get wrapped up in the end, and it was like, oh no, that just sort of served the things that Ishiguro wanted to focus on, and some of those things didn't really pay off. So that might not annoy some readers. Me as a sci-fi reader, it created a little bit of an itch that I didn't get to scratch.
yeah,
Uh, but I think this will have a wide appeal. Like this is the type of sci-fi that I could say give to my mum, who maybe doesn't read a lot of stuff about uh, time travel and aliens and that kind of thing. I think she might enjoy this book. So I agree with you guys there. I also agree that there were some plot conveniences. I don't. Obviously, we're not going to go into that for spoiler reasons. Maybe that was just because of this sort of fairy tale like quality that Ishiguro wanted to create, or maybe that's because the story is being told from an AI character's perspective. So maybe not everything is quite as it seemed
yeah,
as it would for a human. But the thing that I disagreed on was not connecting with the human characters. I did care about Josie. I did care about Rick. I did care about mother, as
Okay.
as Klara would call them. And I felt like they did have voices. I felt like there were subtle differences, but to me they were all believable. They were all kind of going through certain things that I related to and connected to. And so for me, the relationships worked just as well as the characters, even though Klara is the highlight, as as well as the individual characters. It all worked for me.
Interesting.
I will say though that the language is strange. I don't. People don't talk like that in our world, but I kind of pass that off as it being a different time period, and social interactions in this world are very strange. A lot of it is kind of regulated. It's like, okay, we got to get these kids together in a room and force them to socially interact. So perhaps the fact that kids are learning from books, teachers, movies, as opposed to real human interactions, is why the way they spoke, the language, just felt a bit off, which I kind of enjoyed. I like that sense of uneasiness helping add to that world building, feeling like we were in a new place. So that part worked for me. And I'll just throw in one other thing that didn't quite land as well for me. And that was, I thought the ending had an emotional impact, but like my sort of anxiety level, my emotional investment throughout the whole book was at like a 10. And then the ending was like, it still kind of had like a bit of an oomph to it, but I thought it was just going to go, I thought I was just going to be in tears. I thought this is going to be an all-time book for
Yeah.
me. I was going to lose it. And then at the end I was like, oh, that was good, but it didn't reach the heights that maybe the lead up had set my expectations to be.
Yeah, it was kind of a slow fade, which makes sense if you read the book also. But the ending didn't pack that punch. But it was interesting, and the one thing that you mentioned about some of these things being unanswered that we were hoping to get some answers from about the world, for example, right? Some of the things. Uh, I think a lot of people are enjoying that because if you go on Reddit and different forums, there people are talking about, well, I think this is what happened in this moment, and this is what happened at the ending, and this was actually the person who she was talking at the end is this person. So there's
Yes.
like all these theories. So I think for some readers, this could be a positive, this kind of open-ended. Uh, I personally was hoping for a little bit more, coming together. Yeah.
Yes, definitely. So I think that's a good point. And as we transition over to the film now, we're going to talk about whether we're excited to watch the film, what we think could come out of this book in onto the screen in a way that we think will be enjoyable. So, Bart, are you going to watch this movie? What are you going to be looking for if you are
Hello.
interested in watching the movie?
Of course, I'm gonna watch the movie. Um, yeah, you'll probably get invited to the premiere, Jonathan. Didn't you get invited to? Because this video is gonna do big numbers, and you're gonna get invited to the premiere.
For those who want the answer to that question, I did get invited to the
Exactly.
Three Body Problem series Netflix premiere in London, and I live in Los Angeles, and plane ticket was not included. So, hey, if there's a
Oh,
Klara and the Sun event in LA, all right, let's go. I'll be there. Thank you, Bart.
yeah, yeah. I remember you mentioned that. So yeah,
Yeah,
there's
you
a
should have sent
chance.
it to me. I would have gone.
Yeah. Hey, yeah. If there's any London, any UK events, send
Yeah, send them
Robin
my.
at Bookspin
Yeah,
the invite.
that's awesome. That's awesome. So the movie, yes, I'm excited about the movie. I think what's going to work well. I think overall, I think this could be a great movie because I think the story is there. I think the story is there, and I think it's an opportunity almost for a filmmaker to add something that was maybe missing in the book, and that's what I'm hoping for. Because what
Mm,
I got out of the book, I don't need the same thing to be fed to me through the movie. And I think when you have a book and you're trying to adapt it into a movie, you're trying to be faithful, hopefully, to the storyline. But being able to step away actually from Klara a little bit and having zoom out and see her, it's an opportunity for that world building that was lacking for us a little bit. Maybe I don't know if Ishiguro is involved in the production at all, but hopefully he is in some ways giving his ideas about what this world might look like. Maybe we get a little bit more information about some of the science fiction elements that we were hoping to get a little bit more exploration or explanation, and we didn't. So I think it's a fantastic opportunity to do that. And also, I do like a couple of the choices as far as casting. I think Amy Adams is awesome. She was fantastic in Arrival. She's just solid
totally.
always.
Hmm.
She's great. I think she's gonna do really well. Natasha Lyonne also. I seen her in Russian Dolls. She was really good. She's this kind of a weird character. I think she's gonna be awesome. She has a small role. I think she's the manager there. So I'm optimistic about those choices. And yeah, I just think it's a fantastic opportunity to paint a beautiful picture. I watched an interview with Kazuo Ishiguro where he was talking about the fact that this story originally in his mind was a picture book for kids, and
Interesting.
his daughter read it. His daughter is also an author, and she told him, "No, what are you crazy? This is too dark. This isn't for kids. This is a novel for adults." And that's when he, but still he inserted a lot of these. He painted beautiful pictures in the book, whether it was in the city or in the fields, with her. So I think this could be a beautiful book that connects different themes very well, explores love, explores AI, and I think if it's done well, I think it's going to be a hit. I think it's going to be a popular one also because a lot of people did read the book. This was Clara and the Sun was first book that Ishiguro wrote after he got his Nobel Prize in Literature. So a lot of people were waiting to see what he's going to put out. I think a lot of
Interesting.
people were disappointed by this book because of some of his previous works that got him the Nobel, and this seemed maybe a little bit lackluster because of that. But overall, a lot of people did read it, and I think so. I think that a lot of people are waiting to see the movie, and so am I.
Nice. Robin, what do you think might work well in the film adaptation?
Well, I'm definitely looking forward to it. I think this has the potential to be a very atmospheric and emotionally powerful film
Mhm.
that could leave a deep impression on the viewer. And what I'd really like to see is some. I'd like to see the dystopian world building uh, be brought to life on the screen. I and I think I think they can capture the mood of the book. And the way I imagine this on screen, I kind of envision it like an extended Black Mirror episode,
Mm, I
which
like that.
is, if you're familiar with Black Mirror, it's usually set in the near future. And it's set in quite a dystopian, bleak world, and we see the effects that technology have on our lives. And I think that would be the perfect kind of vibe to get across with Clara and the Sun. So if they can do something like that, I won't be disappointed. I haven't really looked into any depth into like the cast or the director, so I don't really know anything about the movie, but I'm definitely going to watch it. I'm looking forward to it.
Nice. So I agree that I think that some of the strengths of the film that we talked about, like the character of Clara, the tone, are things that could be captured well on screen. Because sometimes, like I love sci-fi, but sometimes with these crazy ideas and concepts, it requires sort of insane visuals or thinky stuff that's a little bit harder to translate visually. Whereas I think what, for the most part, we connected with in the book was sort of like the human emotions or maybe artificial emotions, but character emotions that I think could be captured quite well in the film. And it's being directed by Taika Waititi, who we don't need to go through his whole filmography, but people kind of love for a while. Maybe the last couple of things, maybe not received quite as well. But
I like
if
Jojo Rabbit.
I love Jojo Rabbit, Jojo
Yeah,
Rabbit was fantastic. So I think if people are worried, oh, he is a little bit too silly, like his comedic sensibility might be a bit too far out for this book. I would say if you watch some of his earlier things like Boy, um, Hunt for the Wilder People, I think he's able to kind of strike that chord of something that's a bit more grounded. Because this has a couple of funny moments, but it's for the most part, it's a pretty sort of dramatic, emotional story. I think he has the filmmaking chops to be able to capture the right tone, the tone that we all enjoyed, are looking for in Clara and the Sun, and it's going to be interesting to see what he shows visually because I did want to see more of the world building, and so there's a chance for us to see that. And then there's also some mysteries where Clara will describe something, but because of her vocabulary or understanding,
mhm.
it might not mean what we think it means, or she might think it's obvious, but we're like, what does she mean by that? And so it's going to be interesting to see how much of that we actually get to see on screen to either clarify that, or is there going to be some little sort of interesting filmmaking techniques where things are just alluded to, and we still don't get to see them, even though we put it on screen. We're still not exactly sure to what Klara is referring to, but I think those could be some strengths. Robin, what do you think is going to be tough to translate, or you think might not work so well in the film medium?
Um, it's hard to say, but I think there are definitely challenges which might be difficult to to be adapted. I think so. I think probably the biggest challenge that the filmmakers have is to how they're going to portray Klara, to create a convincing android character that really does justice to how she is described in the book, how she's presented, and I think that's going to be a huge challenge for the director and also the actress. Um, and so I think there's a risk there that they might not get it right, or they might not get it right for everyone, right? Because everyone will have, each reader will have a slightly different way of imagining what Klara looks
Mm.
like, or feels like, or acts like. Um, and I know from watching androids and AI characters in other movies, sometimes they get it right, sometimes they don't. And um, so I'm not saying it won't work. I'm just saying that there's a risk it could flop. But it could be amazing. So I'm gonna withhold judgment. In my opinion, that's going to be the most the biggest challenge to come across on screen. How they're going to actually portray a convincing AI in Clara's character.
Yeah, I think a lot hinges on that. But do you
Mhm.
have any concerns going into the film?
Well, I definitely agree with what Robin had said because it's a double-edged sword. What I said may work in the movie, kind of stepping away from Clara, zooming out and seeing more of the big picture and seeing things through a different lens. Uh, I'm afraid also maybe to its detriment because maybe we're gonna lose what really made this book special, which was Clara and her perceptions and kind of this strange way of figuring out what is going on. So it could, like I said, double edged. Who knows? But I think there is that risk for sure. And also, Robin mentioned the difficulty in playing Clara. I hope it's Jenna Ortega who is the actress who's going to play Clara. I don't know. We'll see. I'm not too familiar with her. I've seen a couple of maybe one or two episodes of her and when she was playing Wednesday Adams, and she was good, but it's a different look, very dark, goth kind of a. I don't know. It's definitely not what I think when I think of Clara. With the purity, with the so. I'm sure Jenna Ortega is a great actress, and she will do the best she can. But there is a challenge there, and Jonathan, you mentioned the director, right? Waititi. Uh, I don't know. I mean, I watched Jojo Rabbit and I really enjoyed it. It was smart and funny. I mean, the portrayal of Hitler in that movie was amazing. I was rooting for the movie at the Oscars. It didn't win, of course, but it was a good movie. So hugely talented director for sure. But from what I've seen of him, also Thor, Ragnarok, funny and big picture and sci-fi. So
Yeah,
use of the CG. I think he can. I'm sure he can do it, but I think most of his movies, and the one you mentioned, I watched also. Um, I forget the
Hunt for the
title right
Wilder
now.
People or
Yes,
Boy.
exactly. Even that, there seems to be a little bit of like an offbeat, quirky kind of a quality to some of his movies, and I hope uh, that doesn't seep into this movie in a major way, because I want it to be told kind of straight up the way the book tells it, without some silliness in it. I don't think it's necessary. I didn't think the book had too many funny moments. There are some misunderstandings and little things like that, but I want this treated seriously, and we'll see. So I'm a little bit concerned about some of those things. The casting of Jenna, I'm not sure. The director also, I don't know. We'll see. And I'm hoping we don't lose the soul of the book, Clara, and she just becomes another character. You know?
Yes. I wouldn't mind because this is a bit of a sad story, a bit of a dystopian world, just a hint of comedy, but I'd want it to be at a 1 or a 2, not like a
Yeah,
9 or a 10. So
I
I'll
agree.
trust. I'm gonna put it out there. I trust my TD to get it right. I think in terms of the character of Clara, I'm a fan of the casting. Jenna Ortega, I think she's very talented. Wednesday, I liked her in the Netflix series You. I think she has the acting chops to pull this off. it's going to be interesting to see what they do with her visually to try and differentiate her from humans as an AF. And I think for me, the biggest thing is because it's a first person story, we experience the world entirely through Klara's mind. So I'm going to be interested to see what decisions they make in terms of, is this going to rely quite heavily on narration? Because if there's a lot of
Mm.
voiceover, I think it's easier to sort of capture what the book was. But will that work as well as a film? I don't think, we want a 2 hour film with, like, 90 minutes plus worth of Jenna Ortega narrating what's happening. So I don't think that would work so well. If we completely go the opposite direction and we have no narration, it's a much tinier needle to try and thread, I think, in
Yeah.
terms of, it's going to be like an artsier film, a more ambitious film. But how are we going to visually, artistically, through the acting, through the facial expressions, narratively, musically, like what other techniques do we have to try and convey all of those interesting thoughts that Klara was having without it? So I'm going to guess they go somewhere in the middle. I think we're going to get some narration, but I don't think we can rely on it as heavily in the film medium as we did on the book. So I trust General Ortega. It's just, as a whole,
Okay.
collectively, what tools are we going to use to try and capture that character that I think we all felt was one of, if not the main strength of the book?
Yeah. Yeah, her inner
Yeah.
voice may be a little bit challenging to present properly and balance in the movie. Also, I think in the book we get a lot of, obviously it's all from Clara's perspective, and I'm not sure if she's a reliable narrator at all times. Probably not, especially as the book moves forward, right? I think she loses something due to a certain situation that happens with a certain machine. So I wonder, how that's going to be also portrayed in the movie, because there was this quality about Clara when you were reading this. What is really happening? This is what she says is happening. What is, and that was fun. So we'll see. I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah. I think that there are moments in the book when Clara is narrating where it becomes very obvious that this is an AI narrator. It's not a
Mm.
human, and it sometimes like, for example, when it feels like she's glitching because her
Mm.
her vision sort of gets partitioned into multiple panels,
That was
kind
super
of like
interesting.
we are now on a Zoom screen.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you think, what's going on there?
This is actually
And
me. This is there is no Bart, there is no Robin. This is just Jonathan, Jonathan's portrayal of Bart and Jonathan's portrayal of Robin. That's what you're watching right now.
yeah,
Yeah.
so I'm wondering if they're going to try and sort of portray that on screen. Um,
Oh,
yeah,
that's super interesting. Yeah.
yeah,
If
Yeah,
we
that could be
can,
quite
we
interesting
actually,
visually. And
yeah,
and
because
is what's happening, or is it what Clara thinks is happening?
yeah, I almost thought
Mm.
of like cubism, and in cubist art, you get, this full in one in a flat image. You get different sides and different. And I think she was building the world when she would get nervous or something was happening emotionally.
yeah,
She would kind of break things up, and it made me think of cubism art. That could be super interesting. But again, we'll see which direction they go. Is it going to be more of an artsy movie, more of a, science fiction kind of adventure tale? We'll see. I think
Yeah,
it's coming
looking
out in
forward to.
December, right? Have you seen anything on that?
I keep on
At those theater?
googling Clara and the Sun release date, and everything keeps on saying towards the end of 2024. No set date
Okay.
as of yet, but maybe by the time people are watching
yeah.
this, there might be a date. But it
Yeah,
sounds like we're going to be there. It sounds like, even though we had a couple of issues, generally we were fans of the book, and generally we're interested to see the film. So you guys are going to have to let us know in the comments. Have you read it? Are you interested in reading it? And will you be there to watch the movie? Thanks for watching, guys. We appreciate it.
All right.
Go subscribe to Bart. Go subscribe to Robin. Guys, do you have any closing words for our Clara and the Sun readers and or watchers?
Robin, go first.
Well, I'll just say thank you to Jonathan for inviting me on to this discussion, and thank you to you both for taking part in the buddy read, which was an enormous amount of fun. I do recommend the book. I think you should go out there and read it. Uh, I think the strengths definitely outweigh any of the negatives, in my opinion. It's a great AI character study, and yeah, go out there and read it. Read it before you watch the movie,
Oh
because
yeah.
Yeah.
in my opinion, you should always read the novel first. Um, don't let the film corrupt your original vision. So
Yeah.
yeah,
Well put. Yeah.
Agreed.
So yeah, thank you. I would just say one thing: we should do this again. When the movie comes out, we should just get together, watch the movie, and then you know do a deep dive and see if our thoughts on this movie panned out, and that would be a lot of fun, I think. So maybe
Well,
we'll
yeah,
talk
we'll have
about
to
that at
watch the
some point.
movie and watch this video and be like, Jonathan, you idiot, what were you thinking? Now
It could be
you were
fun.
way off.
It could be fun to look at our perceptions now, our expectations rather, not of the movie, and how it comes out. So maybe we'll talk about it, and let us know in the comments if that's something you'd like to see. But
Awesome.
this was a lot of fun, so thank you both.
Well, I enjoyed the discussion. I enjoyed the book. We'll see if I enjoy the movie. And we hope you enjoyed the video too. Click all the buttons, subscribe, watch the next one. You know how YouTube works. Thanks for being here. We'll see you next time.